People are feeling hopeful. People are feeling a little spicy. Things are getting interesting. Also, we talking about the court hearing the ending the prorogation that Trudeau's put on, and that was accepted by the Governor General here in Canada. So those hearings started today and will continue into tomorrow, and we're hearing kind of bits and pieces coming out about it. But also, that came out just recently, was we heard about the Conservative kind of memo going inside the Conservative Party that they're expecting an election to be called as soon as the new leader of the Liberals is elected in or placed in, however you want to view it. And then we got verification from another party, which was the NDP, which is an internal memo that was going around, stating, on that basis, it says, we believe the rumors of Mr. Carney calling a snap election are credible. Taking a page from Doug Ford's playbook, the Liberals believe that they can turn this crisis into a political benefit for them. For that reason, I'm asking all campaigns to be prepared for an election call to come as early as March 10th. So we're hearing it from the Conservatives. Now we're hearing it from the NDP. This is an expectation this could be coming. And this is exactly what I've warned about, is that Carney waiting, if he gets the leadership, waiting is actually not to his benefit. It will hurt him. So that's why they've been hiding him from the media so much, is because he's trying to make sure that there's a very small amount of faux pas that he'd be making in the media. And so he's just been kind of going through his events, and all we've been seeing is clips going on social media, people having cameras on him, and that's spreading on social media. But he knows his voting base typically watches the mainstream media. So if he stays off that, he stays off the radar. If this weird things he's talking about, that is the concern. And we have Reg here to talk about it with us. How you feeling, dude?
Feeling concerned, man, honestly. So it's exactly what you said. You know, they're keeping him out of the limelight because they know they don't want to take any chances with him saying the wrong thing and upsetting people and spewing some of the wild rhetoric that comes out of his book. If you've ever had a chance to read that, folks, you know, it's a wild ride. So I think that it's exactly what you said. And you kind of touched on it in this morning's episode. We're diving into a little bit of the fact that keeping things quiet means that you allow people to form their own fantasies, I will say. So basically, when you hear from folks being like, Carney's so great, he's done all these wonderful things, and you go, well, what policies is he bringing in that's going to be great? I don't know, but he did such a good job in 2008, and he did such a good job in Great Britain, and that's just the churn that's happening right now. And so by not letting him speak and only having him down in the States talking to CNN and whoever else, I can't remember which.
BBC.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly, BBC. So American media, foreign media, not our own media. What he's doing is creating this appearance that he is well liked and well respected in the international community, and he just doesn't have time to talk to Canadians right now. Because, you know, if it was important, he'd make time, right? Yeah. So it's like the weird no news is good news. It's like, no. They're keeping him shut up so he doesn't say the wrong thing and then completely screw over his campaign. Because right now, by leaving that void, Canadians are left to fill it in, and the mainstream media has just been peddling him as the greatest thing since sliced bread, just going off of his resume.
And we saw what happened with The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, where he's going on shows that don't know anything that's going on in Canada, don't have any background with what's going on and what is happening here. So they can't push him or press him on anything that he said. Especially, we saw the Jon Stewart interview where he admitted in an indirect way that he had something to do with the 2008 crisis not being as bad as it was in Canada. You didn't see Jon Stewart push him on that. He didn't press him on that, didn't question him about that. And those are the interviews that he's currently doing. And that's the good press that's getting out in the foreign media. And because you know, the minute he comes home and he ends up on Vashti's show, he'll get cooked. The fact he did CTV Atlantic with Todd Battis, he thought he could just kind of like walk around Todd because it's just small potatoes, Atlantic Canada. We don't need to worry about that. And Todd asked him some tough questions, and he stumbled and bumbled himself through it and exposed himself for what it was. And that got played consistently, and that was not good.
Yeah, and that's exactly right? I mean, they're looking at Atlantic Canada going, oh, you know, probably 3 million people amongst the maritime provinces and Newfoundland, like not a huge viewership, so we can try it out there first and see what happens. And also, Todd Battis has been very kind to the Liberal Party in previous interviews. So they looked at this as going to be a small win. And then when he asked the question, he's like, you know, well, don't you think that these effects, if you're applying the carbon tax only to these businesses, that these businesses will just pass it on down to the consumer? And then he's like, I can't believe you asked me that. No, obviously not, you idiot.
You don't mind steel.
Yeah, you're not an economist like me. It was just... It's just ridiculous, right? So, yeah, totally. They looked at that and went, uh-oh, that was our test. And if liberal-friendly Atlantic Canada, who has this very nice news anchor who doesn't really ask the tough questions and is very friendly, is asking that question, crap, we can't go anywhere in this country right now because we went to the safe spot, the spot we gave a carve out to. You know what I mean? They're looking at us going, these are probably the most friendliest spot in the entire country, aside from maybe downtown Toronto, that we can go. And they lit us up a little bit, and just enough to point out a crack that we can't go anywhere.
And we've seen all of those events are highly controlled too. They specify which media members can join. They specify who can actually attend, which we've learned that they've now kicked out multiple people in his events that have shared conservative views online. They've kicked those people out, pulled up their profiles during the event, and said, bye-bye. Everything is highly controlled and highly sanitized with this man, and it's all planned because they saw what happened with Kamala in the States. They announced her in July. They had August, September, October, close to 4 months with her leading the way, and they saw how she got fried. So I know this whole March 10th thing is very real because they see it, and everything that's happening is all calculated.
Yeah, and I'm going to get very inflammatory for everybody.
Oh.
Where have we seen this happen in history? Where have we seen a political leader use the political system, the democratic system, to become elected, and then use the media against the public to craft a certain narrative, to change thoughts and ideas, to then exert their political will without discretion, using emergency powers in our example, but in other examples where things were really bad economically, and then they exerted their control to do nefarious things. Does it start with an H and end with an Hitler? But, that's what the left keeps calling anybody who's conservative. It seems to be kind of repeating itself. So there's your inflammatory bit for today. But it's just funny because everything that we're seeing coming out against the right and against, people who have conservative values, it just seems like it's, turn the mirror back on yourself, because obviously you're not listening. Because the things that are being said by the conservative and by the right in Canada, and even by moderates who, maybe traditionally had voted left, they're looking at this and going, holy crap, we're losing the freedom of speech. We're losing the freedom of assembly. We're losing the freedom to bodily autonomy. We're losing the freedom of economic self-determination. We're losing so much at an alarming rate. And if we put Carney in there, because that was with Trudeau, who I don't know if he's the sharpest crayon in the box. If we put somebody in who has some actual intelligence and a nice face again, we're going to get even worse outcomes. And it's going to be we're going to lose so much that you're going to see that brain drain that has been talked about by multiple sources happen even quicker, because you're going to see the people who go, uh-oh, I smell what's in the air. I know it's in the water. This is not looking good for us. And they're going to head south of the border where there actually is some freedoms being restored.
Yeah. And their freedoms are protected down there, which they are clearly very much not. Up here, we only really protect the freedoms of those who are peddling drugs or money laundering or committing crimes. Those are the freedoms that we protect up here. The politicians love those guys a whole heck of a lot. And as we kind of move in and kind of finish this off, there's one thing we need to talk about. It was the Trump announcement on the tariffs of the tariffs on the retaliatory tariffs. And as you're talking about, we elect the Liberal Party again. We're going to get a lot of this, of essentially our dollar being driven into the ground. We are going to go through these tariffs, and there's not going to be a whole lot left because we don't provide a whole heck of a lot. Carney said that he would, emit emergency powers to make sure we got things going, whatever that's supposed to mean. But that's we're going to be in a tough spot with another liberal leadership, and we can't allow it to happen.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that you need to just look at what's happening with the Liberal Party right now. They can put Carney on a pedestal, and then we've been guilty of it too, where it's been so much focus on Carney, and I think the focus needs to come back to the whole Liberal Party as a whole. Aside from Ruby Dalla, I don't know anybody who's actually talked about the stink that is the Liberal Party right now and how it needs to be cleaned up. because right now that whole party is guilty. All the backbenchers who voted yes with every bill that went through and every change that was made, the whole party's guilty. I don't care who you put in there. Unfortunately, you throw Ruby in there, like Ruby, you're going to have to do some time to clean that up because that party is guilty. And I wouldn't, like, even if she becomes leader of that party, I wouldn't vote for her because I don't think the Liberals deserve it. I think they need to do some real soul searching and think about the harm that they've caused to Canada. And so when I look at like what they've done here with the prorogament, and I know we have the trial that's currently in process right now before the Supreme Court to determine whether or not the prorogament was legitimate and actually fairly administered. Regardless of how that goes, I think that what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the shaking of confidence of Canadians in our democratic process. And I think that part of the problem is that regardless of if this election happens or is called, not happens, but is called on March the 10th, regardless of how the court case goes, I think we have a serious problem with this Liberal Party, and people need to, wake up and have those conversations, do so gently with friends and family who don't agree with you, to try and convince people to not fall for the BS and get this government out of power, because they're, like, as you said this morning, they're acting like fascists. They're trying to consolidate control. They're trying to warp the media. They're trying to warp perception, and it's toxic.
Yeah, and I think on that note, I think it's really important to touch on this. I know we were planning a whole episode for it, so if we do a Cole's Notes, I think this is important in terms of people going those conversations with. So we've talked about the things that we know that the Liberals are bad in, but how can we balance that with, okay, but what does Poilievre do better?
Yeah, so one of the things that we can look at with Poilievre, consistently over time, he's like promoted economic development, but smart economic development. Because the problem is with Carney, he's going to push all economic development funding towards the Carney family of companies that are, Brookfield assets. And he's going to recommend consultants that are Carney friendly. Like, you're going to just see money in the same way that the Green Slush Fund was not released to the public because of how corrupt it is. He's promoting Green Slush Fund 2.0. He's going to do the exact same thing. And you know what? We might get some infrastructure projects. We might get some new development, but it will come at such a cost to the Canadian taxpayer that we'll either dig ourselves into so much debt that we'll never ever see the light of day from it, or there will be so many assets and things that will need to be sold that we'll just be, beholden to large national organizations or large international banks, folks that are outside of Canada and don't share the same interests that we do. So we'll become almost slaves to these, international overlords that will basically own us because we will have borrowed from them. And that's the problem that I'm looking at. So when you look at Pierre, the things that he's pushing for utilizing the natural resources that we have here, clearing the legislative barriers that are in place so that, as he's talked about, the fact that development of any of our natural resources, that it takes like 10 to 15 years. No company is going to look at that and go, that's a good ROI. Absolutely not. I mean, that's longer than an election cycle. If there's another government that comes into play and they have a completely different mandate, they would have spent 4 years investing in something that could get canceled. They're not going to do that. So it's about expedience. It's about removing the legislative barriers, smart investing in our minerals and in our natural resources, so that not only are we harvesting in Canada, but we are processing in Canada. We are then manufacturing in Canada. Because what happens right now is we extract from Canada, we then put on a boat, send overseas to be refined, smelted, manufactured, turned into something that is then sent on a boat back to us. It is then trucked all across the continent for us to then buy back. And the fact that that is not just absurd to anybody who's an environmentalist blows my mind. Also, the fact that those countries that we're then shipping out to, Taiwan, China, the Asian Pacific, they don't have any of the same environmental protections that we do. Under a Pierre government, what we would see happen is we would see environment still being respected because there's rules and legislation that we have that they're just not going to throw out because the Canadian public would lose it, rightfully so. So you'd actually see the add value processes that we always talk about in business happen within our own borders, and then the actual time to market shorten because we're not shipping things across the globe and burning all those, hydrocarbons in the process. So you're actually doing everything in-house and bringing it to the store in your neighborhood so that you would actually have a localized Canadian supply chain. And then what we need to do is we need to look at the rest of the world and say, what is it that the rest of the world is buying? It's energy, it's raw materials, it's goods and services, it's food. And we need to invest in those. And these are the things that Pierre's talked about. He's talked about the fact that we need data centers in our Arctic where it's cold, where we're not spending all the money, the oil, and the energy to cool these massive systems down that are going to power the AI of the future. Like, these things are so in line with green initiatives. It's just, I just don't understand, because what's happened is that the media has just warped everything that he said to make it sound like he's just here to watch the world burn. It's like, it's actually the polar opposite. And there's no reason why we can't be the most wealthy, green, safest nation on this planet. And these are the things that Pierre has been talking about. And no wonder he's mad. No wonder he's angry. No wonder he's coming across in the media like he's just done with it all. Because he is. He's been doing this now for years. And everybody likes to talk about how he's a career politician. Maybe because he's dedicated, sick of all the BS, and has been waiting for this moment to take power and actually correct some of the wrongs. And that's my soapbox on that one. So I will just say that, like, I have full support of him because of what I've read, what he said, and just knowing that if I was in his position, I would feel exactly the same way.
Amen to that, brother. And I'm not even going to try and cheapen that by adding to it. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.